Repatriation from Iraq is no longer mandatory after the Foreign Affairs Department downgraded the alert status of the Middle Eastern country. Let's get the latest from Ambassador Generoso Calonge, who joins us now via Zoom. Good afternoon, sir. Well, first off, I just want to ask, because the DFA noted improved security situation there in Iraq as a basis for this downgrade. Can you tell us how the situation is there in Iraq exactly? Let's start off with the peace and order situation.
The situation in Iraq is, well, first of all, I'd like to greet you good day and thank you for this opportunity to enlighten you about our situation here. And I'd like to thank Secretary Locsin and Assistant Secretary Doy Ver, who helped us realize this interview. The situation in Iraq is on alert level 3, as mentioned by you, and it means that there are pockets of areas. There are areas where the situation is not very stable, and these are places where there might be imminent threat to the physical safety of individuals, even Iraqis themselves, because of the presence of forces that are fighting the government. Having said that, however, there are also places like Erbil in the Kurdistan region of Iraq and the central part of Baghdad, which enjoy relative safety and relative order.
All right, just to clarify on that point a little bit more, Ambassador Calonge, are there a lot of OFWs in those places in Iraq with pockets of unrest, or are most OFWs in the more peaceful parts?
The areas where we observe unrest are called no-go zones, and they are not allowed to go there. In fact, they're not allowed to be employed there. So that's in the board resolution that was earlier issued by POEA. So even members of the diplomatic corps are not allowed to go there. What is obvious in those places are the presence of heavily armed militias and also strong presence of the government through its armed forces and its police forces.
All right, well, sounds pretty much like the situation back here at home. But Ambassador, what about the COVID-19 situation in Iraq? How is it going over there, COVID-wise?
We believe that the situation will improve slowly because they just had an election on October 10th. It was a parliamentary election, and we were invited by the UN to participate as observers, and I was happy to have visited 12 precincts, and in those precincts I have not observed any untoward incident, and in fact the election process was highly commendable and very, very peaceful. But according to some media reports, there are places in what they call the contested areas where there is a bit of disorder after the elections. But generally speaking, it was a very well-conducted elections, and many observers, including the UN, praised the Iraqi High Electoral Commission for doing a good job.
Right, and I assume you are in the capital of Baghdad. How's the government there, or the authorities, the health authorities there, handling the COVID-19 outbreak? And are COVID cases in your region and in your area particularly bad at the moment?
Yeah, on COVID, their cases are kind of mirror image what our numbers are. Their cases total 2,060,066. Recoveries are 2,009,921. and their deaths number 23,971. So their average daily infection is at 2,000, and for now there are 20,000 active cases. But note that their figures, while they almost approximate ours, their population is only 40 million, while we have 107 million or so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we are still ahead because of our population.
Well, that's very nice to know. Now let's focus on OFWs, Ambassador. Are a lot of the OFWs there in Iraq volunteering or wanting to be repatriated back to the Philippines still at this point in time?
No. That's why we lowered the Secretary Locsin lowered the alert level from 4 to 3, because the situation on the ground is that only those who wish to come to us desire to be repatriated. Not everybody wants to be repatriated. As a matter of fact, we have workers who have gone back to the Philippines and to third countries who are wanting to come back. That's why we have the Balik Manggagawa program that was instituted in 2018, but the program was suspended, and later a total ban was imposed, and those two were later partially lifted as a result of the GBR, or Governing Board resolution by the POEA on October 28, I believe. So they can come back for as long as they comply with the rules that have been set by the new GBR, and provided they will also go back to their old employers who still welcome them to get back.
That's very, very comforting to hear. Now, sir, a lot of OFWs that are bound for Iraq are also now exempted from the deployment ban. However, this is supposedly subject to specific conditions. Can you talk us through what these specific conditions are?
Oh, yes, of course. One is, I had to take a look at the rules. Yes, there are 7 conditions. Do you have time for this?
Of course we have time for it, sir.
Okay. The first one is the OFW concerned must be an active worker in Iraq with proof of recent stay in Iraq. For example, there is proof of his or her departure from Iraq at the time the program was suspended. Second, there is proof that the OFW, I mentioned this earlier, that the OFW is returning to the same employer. So he or she should have an employment contract with that same employer. The third is the contract between the OFW and the employer must comply with Philippine and Iraqi labor laws jointly. The fourth is the OFW must not work in the no-go zones. Also, I've mentioned this, but I have not mentioned the exact places. The exact places are 4 or 5. Do you have time?
Go ahead, Ambassador.
Yes. These are the provinces of Anbar, Nineveh, Kirkuk, and Mosul.
Okay.
As you know, Mosul is still exhibits danger because it used to be the base of or the headquarters of ISIS, and we all know that ISIS was physically defeated in 2017. Mosul was liberated, but now there are still remnants that are appearing on the scene. So there's still some danger there. Sadr city within Baghdad province. Baghdad province is different from the city of Baghdad itself. It's a bigger area. And Amedi in Erbil province, but the head of foreign relations of the Kurdistan region of Iraq has clarified to me that Amedi should be removed from the list because there are no restrictions of any kind in that place. And Makhmur, Erbil province, Makhmur is now under the jurisdiction of Mosul, so it's included in the first area that I informed you about. Number three, the employer of the OFW signs an undertaking guaranteeing secured work premises in Iraq. Many of the employment areas here are in quite secure areas, actually. They are in compounds where there are guards. There are precautions against missile attacks in terms of concrete walls. And also, we believe that by their guaranteeing the work premises to be secure, they will do everything in their power to prevent injury to our workers. Number six, the employer of the OFW signs an undertaking guaranteeing financial sponsorship and facilitation of the repatriation of the OFW and would cover both airfare and visa penalties, if there are any. So the role of the worker is very heavy in the sense that it's almost in his hands to guarantee the personal safety of our workers. And finally, the OFW must not be a household service worker. He should not be a maid. He should not be a servant in a residence. We have been witnesses to the untoward treatment of many of our household workers in many countries, and we don't want to have that repeated in Iraq. So those are the conditions that a worker should satisfy before he can come back, he or she can come back.
Right, very, very rational conditions. Sir, very, very quickly, if you would say there was one major concern of all Filipinos in Iraq, or a prevailing concern of a lot of Filipinos there in Iraq, what would it be?
Safety and security is a strong concern because that tops every other concern in my view. Also, mobility is a very, very serious concern because between the provinces, even just within Baghdad itself, there are so many checkpoints, and you have to satisfy what the checkpoints demand from you. They demand IDs, and they look at the contents of your car. And also, this is just for the general information of our people. There are the Kurdistan region of Iraq, which is an autonomous region in the northern part of the country, has a different visa regime from the rest of Iraq. In other words, a person who enters the country, let's say in Baghdad International Airport, cannot just go to Erbil, the capital of the Kurdistan region, and vice versa. If you enter the Kurdistan region and you wish to go to the other parts of the country, you will encounter some difficulties. So freedom of movement is very restricted, and Iraq is a country where everywhere you go, you have to carry your passport, and it can be checked at any time. So the other thing is, I would say, communications is also a problem, but the internet has solved all this because sometimes it's difficult for us to get in touch with our citizens who are in the border areas, in the what they call the contested areas. Sometimes there was a time last year when we had a Filipino citizen who entered via, I believe, Istanbul, and went directly to Basra, got sick there, and we had difficulty tracing his entry to our country, to this country. I'm sorry, and all he wanted was to go back to Istanbul and later proceed to the Philippines for further medication. So in that sense, while we have modern communication facilities, we have cell phones, etc., the movement between the provinces and the border areas, because if you look at the map, Iraq is bordered by 4 countries. To the north is Turkey. To the right is Iran. To the left is Syria, and at the bottom is Kuwait. So in those areas where there is possibility for Filipinos to enter, it's quite difficult at first to monitor them.
All right, thank you so much for your time and all those updates from Iraq. Thank you so much for sharing all of those with us. Philippine Ambassador to Iraq, Sir Generoso Calonge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it very much.